So let's see in today's video about how actually US dollar has become world's most trustworthy stable currency, because without understanding the history, we can't understand the macro trends which is happening today. US can afford to keep the debt at $33 trillion. If it was any other developing country, just think about the cost of interest they had to serve for this crazy level of debt. So for others' mistake, US never shakes, but if US is witnessing any problem, other economy will also develop cracks. As an NRI investor, please watch out, do a macro analysis before moving all your investments thinking that US dollar is super safe in USD. Even UK dominance had ended when an alternative option had come. So the question is whether countries have an alternative option to US dollar. Hello everyone, welcome to Keerthi's FinFo NRI community. I'm CS Keerthana. I live in Dubai and I run the consultancy, a firm which is specialized in NRI services. I have done my CS from India and also CMA strategic level from UK. I am also a SEBI registered overseas MFT. Every week, I bring an explainer video on the topics related to NRI issues in this channel. If you're looking for finance, FEMA, taxation as well as investing related topics, please subscribe this channel. Recently, in social media and also in mainstream media, there were a lot of rumors about the end of Petrol deal, where it was discussed that Saudi Arabia is planning to walk away from US dollar. However, the news is yet to be confirmed, but it had reignited the topic. Is dollar losing its relevance? Recent years, you must have observed even central banks across the world have started buying gold in large quantity in an attempt to diversify the reserve, reducing the exposure to US dollar. In 2023, UN Secretary General said that we need new Bretton Woods movement to regain the financial stability in order to create a new economic order. After 2008 crisis, the dependency on dollar was frequently analyzed since the collapse had ripple effect everywhere. Global debt is at alarming level. We are witnessing a new era of low growth where there are trends of deglobalization, de-dollarization, etc. NRIs, you really can't afford to ignore these things because these macroeconomic trends matters a lot. It will have a currency risk or interest rate risk, inflation risk. In fact, it can impact the whole investment portfolio. So as NRIs, we also tend to think that US dollar is super safe and it is only INR which is losing its value against dollar. So we blindly tend to trust US dollar. But we should actually be hedging currency risk. So let's see in today's video about how actually US dollar has become world's most trustworthy stable currency, because without understanding the history, we can't understand the macro trends which is happening today. So let's see these points. First one, how US dollar became world's most powerful currency. Secondly, why world may be heading towards alternative options such as gold, CBDC or basket of other currencies. Third, as NRIs, how can we manage our exposure to such risk and what exactly I'm doing. So stay tuned till the end. First thing first, how US dollar became world's most powerful currency. Now we all know that gold is touching new high every time, right? Did you know that there was an era where currency was tied to the gold? Let's call it golden era. Jokes apart. This era where gold standard existed, where the value of nation's currency was actually tied to a particular amount of gold. Who introduced it? None other than Big Brother America. So where they said that, come on, you can trust our dollar because for every dollar in circulation, we will have backup of gold. And the world was then desperately looking for such promise or assurance. Why? Because of World War II. World War II had shattered, torn apart many of the economies. When the World War II ended, gold standard was adopted. World embraced Bretton Woods system. All the countries would exchange the currency for US dollar and US dollar will have a backup with gold. This is what it was agreed in Bretton Woods Agreement. Bretton Woods Agreement was signed allowing the economies to heal from Second World War and move towards prosperity. In fact, this also has led to the birth of twin institutions, IMF and World Bank, where they were given responsibility of reducing the poverty and improving the state of economies. How far it has succeeded, it is entirely different topic of discussion, but The intent was noble. IMF had to monitor the exchange rates and lend the money to support the needy. Let's see what was this Bretton Woods agreement. Here it was agreed that US dollar is going to be pegged to gold and other currencies could be pegged to USD. The main goal was to create an efficient forex exchange rate where there would be no exchange rate volatility or fear of currency depreciation. So all these 44 countries agreed that we are going to have a fixed peg against US dollar and deviation of 1% was permitted. So the economists like Keynes, who was the main brain behind this, hope that this exchange rate volatility, when it is kept at minimum, through international loans, economies can work to reduce the poverty and even the trade relations can improve. When the whole world was emotionally, economically devastated by the war, they felt it is better to trust the system and all the 44 nations consented to this agreement. The simple logic was, money is a measure of value, right? It works the best when it is tied to a stable asset. See, 1 gram of gold is equal to 1 gram of gold in any form. It may be coin, it may be jewelry, it may be anywhere, right? But 1 gram is equal to 1 gram and also it is fungible. So let's say a country A wants to do business with country B. It can do any trade without fearing the volatility in its exchange rate. Just focus on the main execution of the trade. So this was the intent. At this point, what has actually happened is the rise of US dollar as a reserve currency begins. Now, this data clearly shows over the year how the US dollar as a reserve currency has increased. But did US keep its promise? Now, all of us know that it is exporting inflation to the world. And at that time, it also did not continue with the gold standard for longer period of time. It has ended it all of a sudden. In 1971, President Nixon had delinked economy from the gold. He called for temporary suspension because they couldn't get enough gold to back up USD in circulation.
Protect the position of the American dollar as a pillar of monetary stability around the world. I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States.
US economy had suffered due to Vietnam War. Bretton Woods system had collapsed. Countries were given choice to choose any exchange rate arrangement except gold. Means one country can choose basket of currency or a single currency or allow their currency to freely float. If you are thinking why this happened, this delinking event is famously in the history known as Nixon shock. It was actually a shock where, in order to tame the stagflation, which was actually created by US, allow the countries to have better control over the money supply. This was the script which was shown by US to the rest of the world, because US knew that it had to launch itself and continue as a global leader, and it had to be done. President Nixon had these main goals: allow US to heal from inflation of post-Vietnam War, lower unemployment rate, protect USD from speculation. You see a simple logic here. Gold is limited in supply. So when you're linking it, it made Fed to struggle to have enough supply of the gold to cover it up. During the volatility, what people did? People started hoarding, speculating, which made US dollar overvalued. So even the government started attempt of shoring up the dollar reserve, and US had to exit this. US had strategically communicated to the world saying that in order to end stagflation, this is the need of hour, because you can't adjust the amount of money if we continue to tie it with the gold. So gold standard has to end. So in stagflation, where people had battled muted stagnant growth for such a long period, they really suffered due to high inflation. So they wanted to listen to what US had to say. Let me draw your attention to present situation also. Just pause and think, what is happening now? Do we actually have signs of inflation and stagnant growth? It's difficult because government around the countries are giving contradicting data. But there is little variation, I agree. Fed is not able to lower the interest rate. That means inflation is still not under the control of what the target rate is, 2%. But employment or consumer confidence is little okay. But GDP in the first quarter in US had turned out very low, that is at 1.6%. So we all know that when US is catching cold, rest of the countries also will start sneezing, right? Same thing had happened in 1970s. When gold standard ended, Japan chose the yen to freely float in the market. Majority of the economies in Middle East, they chose US dollar. India had its own journey, which we will visit in another video. Now actually it is floating freely, allowing the demand and supply to determine the exchange rate with RBI's interference whenever necessary. In 1993, it moved from fixed peg to USD to market predetermined exchange rate. So now, one of the major trend is central banks diversifying the reserve to gold. So they are again fearing something related to USD and turning towards gold. Emerging economies like India, Turkey, Russia, China, they are all diversifying their reserve to gold. In January 2024, the global banks have increased the reserve. Look at this chart. So if you're thinking why this story is relevant, because history repeats. The dollar dominance tracks back to the time where USA had assumed the power as a global superpower after World War II. The world trusted US markets liquidity, its military might and stability. Dollar became investors' heaven. Even in recent times after COVID, we have seen how USD had gained value during uncertainty. US is still perceived as the best place to invest in good times and in bad times. Imagine the blind trust investors during 2008 recession, which was actually created by US. US itself had pushed everybody to recession, but worldwide investors' belief made US dollar to appreciate by 26% against basket of other currencies. But now ask yourself how long this kind of blind trust can continue. And the truth is, by printing money, inflation can't be managed. By increasing the debt limit to 33 trillions, it's not going to vanish. Economic dominance was always analyzed by the people, by the government in the time of crisis. It started with US ever since it had sent the shock waves of recession in 2008. And especially the other countries have started realizing using USD as a payment on reserve currency because see, US is a home to many financial institutions and networks like SWIFT, which actually it uses to knock off the enemy country. BRICS nations are planning to float their own currency to have stability. And many started losing value in fiat currency also. So they started viewing blockchain technology as a savior. There are many trends. No mighty currency loses its power overnight. That I agree. Even British sterlings started losing its sheen only in 1890, paving the way for US to rise as superpower. See, UK had built its economic dominance using colonialism and US used Second World War, and it assured the world to lift them from the crisis if they try everything around US dollar, whether it is stock market, debt market or medium of trade execution. But fast forward today, countries have realized that if somebody has benefited the most by this arrangement, it is America itself. Because the trust factor is so high, US can afford to keep the debt at $33 trillion. If it was any other developing country, just think about the cost of interest they had to serve for this crazy level of debt. So for others' mistake, US never shakes. But if US is witnessing any problem, other economy will also develop cracks. When Fed started printing the money after COVID, then to tame inflation, kept increasing the interest rate, or majority of the countries watched helplessly. US dollar had gained value, so other countries started experiencing the currency depreciation and they were also forced to keep the interest rate at high. It started impacting their growth. So this is the cost of dollar dependence. That's why there are now rumors that even oil-rich countries like Saudi Arabia, they're not planning to renew the petrodollar deal. If this turns out to be true, it's going to be a huge blow to USD as a transaction currency also because its share in reserve, it has already started deteriorating. And if you go back in the history, you will realize that US had understood how important oil can be to the world. That's why they made the oil-rich countries to make all the payment in dollar. So the demand for dollar is always there. If you are thinking, why should I bother about all this macro trends? I'm just an ordinary investor. It matters to you. As an NRI investor, please watch out, do a macro analysis before moving all your investments thinking that US dollar is super safe in USD. Even UK dominance had ended when an alternative option had come. So the question is whether countries have an alternative option to US dollar. They can. It may be China's currency, BRICS currency, Bitcoin, CBDC, or even it can be fragmented where certain countries internally agree to transact in any of this mode. Time only will answer this, which can be an alternative currency. But the dominance of dollar started witnessing deterioration as a payment as well as reserve currency. Even countries started buying gold just to attempt diversifying the reserve from USD to gold. So don't blindly trust dollar and build your entire wealth. Just keep certain limit on the exposure and stick to periodic review. We might witness a different world order, financial system backed by maybe precious metals, crypto, basket of few currencies, or even CBDC. How things will play out and when is the only one question mark now. So as an investor, what I do, my major exposure is still in Indian market because the growth is well diversified there. To hedge the currency risk, I definitely have kept 30% exposure in US market. I always review the allocations considering the trends and using the top-down approach and the threats also from time to time. So no more it is about blindly trusting any market, asset or currency and forgetting where your hard-earned money is invested. Hope this video gives you some insight to plan your investment. If you like this video, please share it, like it and subscribe this channel. With more interesting topics, see you next time. Bye-bye.